Hello, everyone. My name is Christiana Morales, and welcome to Disability Voices United, SDP Connect. Happy New Year! It's the first one of the year. Have a great presentation for you today. Before we get started, I want to let everybody know that we do have interpretation in Spanish and Korean. So please go down to the bottom of your screen where there's the globe and select your language. Even if you speak English, you need to select English, or you won't hear if a question is interpreted, you won't hear it in English. If you're on a cell phone, go to the three dots, and then you will see the languages that you can select from there. We have a few announcements before we get started with our presentation. We have some awesome new staff members. I am so excited to introduce them to you. Eric, could you raise your hand and say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'll be
And
serving as a self-determination program assistant for Christiana, so I'm happy to work with everybody here.
we're so excited to have him. And Elena, say hello.
Hi everyone. I'm also going to be started as a SDP assistant.
Wonderful. And we also have Fidelia, who is with us today.
Hi, good afternoon.
So I want everyone to know to not worry that Kira is not leaving us. She has been promoted. She is going to be doing all of our events, which is so exciting. And if you had anything to do with our conference, you know that Kira was our conference goddess and kept us all running. So we are very happy that she's going to be handling our events in the future. Speaking of the conference, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that if you weren't able to attend the conference, we do have the videos from that available. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly and show you how to find them. If you were a participant, if you came to the conference, you automatically get these. You do not need to pay for them again. If you didn't get an email with it, please feel free to email Kira and they will get the link sent to you. And we'll put Kira's email in the chat. So if you were a participant, make sure that you go there. I know it says pre-order here. It's no longer pre-order. We do have them live. So go to our DVU site and you can click on the order, and it's $25 and you get a video of every single breakout room that we had. So please go ahead and do that and enjoy them. There were so many great breakout rooms. So I actually haven't finished going through all of them. It was very fun to see. The next one that we have to announce is that we had three pretty major directives come out right at the end of the month, December. So we are not going to go into in-depth discussing them today because they were pretty meaty. So our next Connect, which is on January 24th, we're going to go into a lot of detail. We're going to have a large discussion about it. If you don't know where to find the directives, they are here on the DDS site, and we will put that link in the chat as well, so you can find them. And these top three are the newest ones that came out. DDS is also doing meetings to discuss these. And so we're going to put the links for those meetings into the chat so you can go to them. They are going to be on January 16th at 1 o'clock. Or you can attend the January 20th at 9 a.m. And yes, that is a Saturday. So you can attend one of those two meetings. And then the last one is that they are doing a meeting to just discuss the independent facilitator directive for independent facilitators. You probably won't want to attend it if you're not an independent facilitator, because it's going to be very into the woods. And that link will also be in our chat. And that is on January 19th. From 1 to 2:30. So we just want to give people a heads up. If you want to hear from DDS a little bit about what was going on, well, we'll let you know. So we are updating our website. And so what we were thinking would be great is we would love to get pictures from our community out doing self-determination things and having, living your self-determined lives. So we would love it if you would be willing or interested to share photos with us, or it could be like a very short video, like a 30-second video. Email them to us at sdp@dvunited.org. We're going to put that in the chat. And then what will happen is after you email it to us, we're going to send you back a form having a release saying that we can use your photos. So please share your photos. We would love to see all of the things that you are up to, and so we could include them in all of the things that we do. And the last announcement before we get to our presentation is from Judy Mark. I usually don't need to introduce her, but Judy Mark is the president of Disability Voices United, and she's going to be talking about the budget that came out today.
Hi, everybody. I apologize in advance. I have a cold and I can't seem to get any better from this. So you'll have to excuse me and I will try not to cough too much. Luckily, we're all in line. I will not make any of you sick. So every January 10th, every year, the governor of California presents his budget. Or it's always been a he. I really should say their budget, but sadly, it's always been a he. Say maybe someday, next time, we'll have a she or a they. So today was the day that Governor Newsom presented his budget. If any of you have been reading the newspapers or listening to anything in the media about the economy, you would know that there's a massive budget deficit that's projected in the state of California. As high as $68 billion needs to be cut from the budget, which is pretty massive. And I wanted to share with everyone very quickly how the budget is going to impact people with developmental disabilities who receive services from regional centers. So I'm going to share my screen. And so this is what the budget highlights look like from the Department of Developmental Services. And I'm just going to go over a few things with you, but I guess the first thing that I would say is that overall, the budget is going to increase for the state of California for the DD system. It's going to go from it's going to have actually an increase of about almost 12%, or $1.6 billion. So during a time when they're trying to cut $68 billion out of the budget, I guess we should feel lucky that they didn't cut any of our services. The last time there was a massive budget deficit in 2009, that is when social recreation and camp services got cut completely. They put a cap on respite and other services, and it devastated the system. So this time, at least, our services will remain. However, there are some significant changes. There has been a 1-year delay in the final adjustments on the rate increases. So many of you know that there have been rate increases in the traditional system over the past several years. The original timeline was to end the rate increases on July 1st of 2025. Last year, the service providers organized and they accelerated that calendar and made it so that the last increase in rates would go into effect on July 1st, 2024. So this year. The governor's budget proposes to push that back to the original timeline of July 1st, 2025. How does that impact people in the self-determination program? All of you should be getting adjustments to your individual budgets based on the previous 2 rate increases that have already gone into effect. You want to make sure that your budgets have been adjusted, by the way. In some regional centers, they will not adjust your budget unless you specifically ask for it. And at least in my regional center, they will not adjust your budget until you justify it, which, by the way, is wrong. But for most cases, you do need to proactively ask for it. So this final rate increase, if this is delayed another year, it will mean a delay to the increase in our budgets for another year. Obviously, that's quite concerning. But I can also tell you that there's, in this era of there's going to be a lot of cuts. It may be pretty difficult to change this, but we will have to see. I can tell you the service providers who are very well funded, way more than we are. They have way more lobbyists and way more people who work in Sacramento than people with disabilities and family members. They're getting very organized around this. and they're saying that they can't wait another year. The other piece that I really wanted to show you, where I have to scroll down, and I can see if I can get this document into the chat at some point, but I wanted to show you, hold on, I think it's coming up soon. Yes, here's the 2024-2025 budget, which begins July 1st, that they have removed. You're going to see this in regional center operations. They have, I can't remember where they show it. Oh, here it is. Here, if you can see where my cursor is in the middle of the screen, they are decreasing regional center operations by $7.2 million. And eliminating the positions of participant choice specialists at all 21 regional centers. So for any of you who are either in the self-determination program or moving into it, you will know that these are usually the staff people that you interact with at the regional centers. They're supposed to be the people most knowledgeable about the self-determination program. And sometimes in most regional centers, one of those positions sits in the accounting department to ensure that FMSs are paid in a timely manner. And so I believe this is going to be quite disastrous for the self-determination program, even though in the scheme of things, $7.2 million is not a lot of money in the state budget. So we're going to do our best to fight this. And so I think there are other, oh yeah, there's one other thing which is not actually in this document, but I can just tell you that the other major thing that came out in the budget today is that there is the Department of Health and Human Services is going to be engaging, which is kind of the overseer of DDS. They're going to be engaging in what they're calling a master plan on developmental disabilities. And they're going to be appointing a committee that are going to be part of developing that master plan over 2024. And so their first meeting is in March. I think that the appointments are going to be happening in the next month or two. And we will keep you abreast of that. But obviously, from our perspective, the self-determination program needs to be front and center in that master plan, and to ensure that our program remains and actually becomes much bigger as the DD system expands. So that is it. I'm not sure if there are any questions. Okay, I will. Oh, thank you, Will Sanford. Thank you, Will, for putting the that in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. And Virginia had a question. Can you share the language of how we get the regional center to add for the SDP budget to be adjusted for the rate increase? My recommendation is that you take a look at the September 15th, 2022 directive, because that is the one that really tells them that they need to be adjusting your budget. So I would use that, take a look at that and use that language. Go to the DDS website where the directives are, and
I'll get it in the chat.
perfect. So without further ado, we have a presentation. So I don't know if all of you know that I have a son who is 21 years old, and he is in his third year of self-determination program. And we saw the opportunity for the direct service professionals stipend program. And we decided to have his employees do the training, and I was able to watch the training and was so loved the training. The first one that everybody has to take was on ethical standards. And so we have the great honor of having John Raffaele, the Director of Educational Services from the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, who was the one who did this training, with us today to talk a bit about the trainings and the stipend program. After he goes, Department of Developmental Services are going to be here to talk about what the stipend program is. So we'll learn the details of the stipend program after that, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to get your financial management service to get them paid. So John, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you, Christiana. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be. I'm actually happy to be here because I thought I wasn't going to be here because I'm coming to you from New York State, and I live up in the mountains of New York State, and we just. You guys know weather out in California, okay? I get that, but we just had a horrible wind and snowstorm. I'm here, powers on. For some reason, if I'm suddenly not here, you'll know that the wind has knocked things out, and watch some videos or something. But I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation. This is a wonderful way to start off 2024. So thank you, DVU, or Disability Voices United. Let me just quick background. I started doing direct support work in 1986. Some of you were probably not born. Some of you were maybe around. But the bottom line is this: back in 1986, almost 40 years ago, I was 20 years old. So you can do the math, or please don't do the math. And I got a job. I needed a summer job. And I was in and out of college and whatever. I was playing rock and roll music. I was going to be a rock star. That didn't really work out too well. So I needed a job. I got this summer job. Long story short, it was a direct support job. I didn't know what direct support was from anything. And back in 1986, I started working with children in residential placement, a lot of kids with disabilities. And the summer job that I was expecting to do just for 2 or 3 months lasted 8 years. I fell in love. I fell in love with working, doing direct support work. I fell in love with working with children with disabilities. And I fell in love with this profession. And what happened over the course of those 8 years, I saw the writing on the wall back in the 80s and the 90s that this world of direct support or direct service work, direct service professional work, direct support professional work, whatever we call it. We're even confused to this day about what do we call these people that do this direct support work. But I saw the writing on the wall back then. And even to this day, we've improved a little bit, but not enough. I saw the writing on the wall that direct support professionals and direct service professionals were not treated as such. We were often glorified babysitters. We were often treated as other professionals guided us as to what we needed to do with the people we were supporting, as opposed to us who really were at that point of interaction with people that we support, knowing them 8-10 hours a day, knowing intimate things about them, knowing really everything that we could possibly know about somebody, when we weren't given any kind of professional authority to work with people with disabilities. And again, the very long story short, why I'm telling you this is that what I do, and the reason I'm honored to be with you today, the reason I'm honored to be employed by the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, is just that we are an organization. The National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals was founded in 1995 by John F. Kennedy Jr. Those of you that are familiar with disability history know probably very well that the Kennedy family has a very rich history of contributing to the world of people with particularly developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities. But John F. Kennedy Jr., he had a real passion for the direct service, direct support workforce. And he saw back in the 80s and 90s, just like I did, my goodness, we need to do something for this workforce to elevate them, to bring them to a place where they have respect, where they have professional authority, and where they're more qualified to do this complex work of supporting people with disabilities. So long story short, again, the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, our whole mission is all about how do we elevate these direct support professionals. Our end game is always that we want a professional workforce that can provide quality, competent, ethical services with people with disabilities and their families. That's our end game. How do we get there? We get there through lots of training. We get there through policy work that we're beginning to do more and more of. And then finally, we do certification. And I know California is ahead of the curve. California is one of the more progressive states in the country. We're a national organization, but California is one of the most progressive states in the union in terms of what you do with developmental disabilities, intellectual disability services and support specifically. And again, why I'm here is that the genesis of this program that I think our friends are going to be talking about from the department. About 2 years this has been in the making. We have contracted and we created training films. What Christiana was indicating just before. We created these training films, the first one being a film on the Code of Ethics, the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals Code of Ethics and its applications. And I'm going to let Vicki and Jennifer talk more about what the state's doing with these films in terms of the stipends and everything. But the bottom line is that we are so thrilled, and that's what I'm going to talk to you today just for a few minutes about. Just what is this Code of Ethics and why is it so important for, obviously, for direct support professionals, but also for family members. And more than anything, why the Code of Ethics is important for people with disabilities. We worked very hard over the course of about a year to produce these films, really tweak them and edit them to what you all have the opportunity in California to now participate in terms of watching these films. And if you're a direct support professional, getting some stipend for that. And again, I'll let our folks from the state talk about that. But I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about the Code of Ethics and why it's so important and kind of what it is, why it is, and a little bit of the background in terms of the Code of Ethics. Please feel free. I think we're going to have a QA period. So throw stuff in the chat box that I think our friends at Disability Voices will be kind of collating, and then I'll be happy to answer questions and stuff like that. At the end, I'll give you my address. You can write me emails. You can call me in the middle of the night, send me flowers, whatever you'd like to do. So let's do this. I'm going to share my screen. I got a couple slides. Let me make sure this works. You think after 3 years doing Zoom, we'd be so proficient at this? Hold on, let me see. How's that looking? All right, how's that looking? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay, great. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that pretty? For those of you that are able to see and are looking at the slides, terrific. For those of you with any visual impairment or anything like that, I will do my best to describe what's on each of the slides. Just so you know, again, for that purpose of inclusion and of respect, I use pronouns he, him. I am a white male with very gray hair, which I'm proud of. I don't mind having the gray hair. I wear glasses, and I haven't shaved, and I don't shave because I don't like shaving. So that's who I am. That's what I look like for those of you that are interested. What I want to talk about is, again, Code of Ethics, the Code of Ethics, the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals Code of Ethics. Here's the thing. I'm going to get into what ethics are in just a second, but even before we get into the Code of Ethics, every profession, if it's a bona fide profession that is recognized by particularly the United States Department of Labor, there must be, as part of that profession, whatever that profession is, there must be some kind of code of ethics or code of conduct that is the agreed upon moral compass for the profession. Now, whatever that profession is, you figure doctors and nurses, teachers, social workers, accountants, my goodness, cosmetologists, think about that. Lawyers. If you can name the profession, there will be an associated code of ethics next to it. The United States Department of Labor recognizes about 900 professions. They have about 900 occupational classifications that are recognized, again, by the U.S. Department of Labor. And each one of them has a corresponding code of ethics. And in fact, so do direct support professionals. I think one of the great things that California has done is put a focus on the fact that, this code of ethics is something that should not only be known, but it should be used. It should be something that is not some document that, is given to a direct support professional upon their employment. It should be something that's utilized every day with the people you're supporting, with family members of the people you're supporting. As a direct support professional, it's something that lives and breathes and should be used. And that's what I want to kind of get across. That's kind of what that film is about that you saw, Christiana. So the Code of Ethics is real brief history. It's been around a long time. It's been around almost 25 years. And it was created. I didn't sit around one weekend making this thing up, drinking beer, smoking cigars, and making up a code of ethics. It was made up by a cross section of stakeholders, including obviously people with disabilities first and foremost, family members, direct support professionals, agency leaders, policymakers, you name it, some academics. Over 100 people throughout the United States were called upon to create this code of ethics. It was finally ratified and published 2001. It was kind of given to our field, and it's been around since then. You can see a couple states have adopted it as something that the states require direct support professionals to attest to. That's wonderful, great. We revised the language in 2016. We kind of just kind of reviewed the language and brought the language up to contemporary standards, made it more inclusive. But the bottom line is this: the Code of Ethics is straight ahead. It's about 2,000 words. I'll give you a link to how to find it and how to get it. It's free, and I recommend anybody that's watching us and listening to us today, you get it and take a look at it, because it's very powerful, very important. And I'm going to put on the screen right there. That's the headlines of the Code of Ethics. As I said, 2,000 words. And these 2,000 words, they are what, again, that stakeholder of people, the set of people that created this code of ethics, again, this moral compass for this profession. These are the 9 parts of the code of ethics. Then when you look and see each of these are the headlines, and each of these tenets of the code, each of these parts of the code of ethics has a definition and then some supporting statements. And it's very simple. It's a very simple code of ethics, not simplistic, but very simple. And let me just give you a couple examples here. That first one you see, person-centered supports. All right, I gotta level with you. I'm done with it. If I hear person-centered one more time, I'm just going to flip my lid. I'm going to throw something out the window and just scream. What does it mean? What does person-centered mean? I think we have all, lost our path sometimes, especially in a system that we're living in and receiving supports from. Whether it's our employer, whether it's the state, due respect to our employers, due respect to the states that DSPs are working in. Being person-centered is very difficult. What does it mean? I'll hear direct support professionals all around the country, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to thousands of direct support professionals a year. And they'll tell me, and when I ask them, what does being person-centered mean to you? And they'll say, well, my job is to make people's dreams come true. Really? Wow. Really? Are you the Wizard of Oz? Are you Walt Disney? I think that's a nice thing. I think it's a wonderful kind of ideal to have. But being person-centered is more than that. And I think when we look at the ethical obligations of being person-centered, we're going to get to what ethics is in just a second. But when we look at the ethical obligation, the moral obligation of being person-centered, That's something we have to do intentionally. Let me give you an example. So Christiane, you have a loved one, a child with a disability. And your child, and I can see you, so you can nod. Your child is of adult age. Is that accurate?
He
Okay.
is an adult.
Is an adult. So, and again, I don't want to break confidentialities or anything like that. But how old is your son?
He's 21, going to be 22 in a couple weeks.
22. So you're a mama, 22-year-old son. And here's the thing. I think this is difficult for direct support professionals sometimes when their allegiance here's what the code says. As a direct support professional, this is person-centered supports. As a direct support professional, my first allegiance is to the person I support. All other activities and functions I perform flow from my allegiance, my loyalty to the person I support. So, if I'm supporting your son as a direct support professional, he's an adult. Maybe he wants to do some adult things that Mama Bear doesn't want him to do. This has nothing to do with disability, the type of disability he might have. This is just general mama-son stuff. Here's the thing. That direct support professional will sometimes, depending on the influence of that parent, of that loved one, the power and authority of that loved one, maybe they could be maybe very intimidating. And so be it. That's it is what it is. That can be a difficult place for a direct support professional to be in allegiance with the person they're supporting if their parent, their sibling, maybe their supervisor, maybe it's a residential setting of some sort, has a different opinion of what that person should be doing or wants to do. So to be person-centered takes some courage. It takes, I think, some will, but it also takes the notion that your allegiance to the person you support has to also be balanced. Because here we go. So you look at the next one down there. I'm not going to go through all these. We don't have that much time. But promoting physical and emotional well-being. Say the person that you're supporting, and this is a true example. Let me give you an example from me. I have a friend. His name is Ed. He gives me the permission to use this story. Ed is about my age, and it's going on about 15 years ago. Ed wanted to do something. And Ed's a man with a pretty significant physical disability. Ed has cerebral palsy. He relies completely on the assistance and support of people to help him with pretty much all of his activities of daily living, transferring from his chair to showers and all that stuff. But Ed does not have an intellectual disability. So Ed says to me and my colleague, John, I want to go skydiving. Okay. You want to go skydiving? You want to go skydiving? Okay. I said, Ed, why do you want to jump out of a perfectly good plane? And he says, I've always wanted to do it. I want to do it. And I was reading up on it, and there's people with disabilities that jump out of planes, and I want to be one of them. I said, well, Ed, and I want you to come with me, he says. I said, no. Ed, if you want to jump out the plane, fine. But you know what? I'm not jumping out the plane. I'll be on the ground, clapping for you as you come down. Hopefully you do come down, in a parachute. What I'm getting at here, Ed had his own self-determination. There we go. I know it's used in California. There's a different kind of definition of self-determination in terms of, the style of supports and all that. But when it comes to the code of ethics, the code of ethics says this: self-determination. As a direct support professional, I will assist the person I support to direct the course of their own life. So here it is. I wasn't necessarily Ed's direct support professional, but two things. One, Ed, man, you got all this stuff going on with your body. I mean, landing diving out of an airplane with a parachute, you got just concerned you're going to break your leg or your arm or something. I got worried. I was worried about his physical well-being. But I was also being person-centered because Ed wanted to do it and said, okay, Ed wants to do it. Ed's going to do it. Self-determination. Ed wants to jump out of that plane. That's a course of his own life. I could have easily said, Ed, you're out of your mind. No, you're not going to jump out of a plane. You're going to get hurt. I'm not involved in this. Bottom line is this: Ed wound up taking lessons. He did fine. He jumped out. He did a tandem jump, as it's called. He was great. We were on the ground. Yay, Ed, good Ed. So of course, afterwards, we had a little get together there, and we asked him, Ed, so you're gonna do this again? He says, hell no. So, point of this is, I think that's a perfect story, right? I could have easily, not only as a professional, but also as he's also a friend. But this is more in a professional context. I want to get across here. I had to be person-centered. My loyalty was to Ed. Ed wanted to investigate just skydiving. I was worried about his physical well-being because that's a reality. Ed has really compromised. His body is compromised, but also self-determination. Directing the course of one's own life. That's at the end of the day, that's what we're all about, isn't it? That should be what we're all about. That should be what our system's all about. But that's very difficult. Let's bring it back to direct support professionals. It's very difficult for direct support professionals to sometimes have this moral compass and this set of ethical duties when they're in that relationship with the people they're supporting. I think we have to have relationships with the people we support, and those relationships, these are human transactions, right? And that's why any professions, they're transactional. So in our world of direct support, talk about the human transaction that we're involved in. It's intimate. We know so much about the people we're supporting. We know so much about their families if we're lucky. We know intimate details about people. So where do we draw the line in terms of the influence we have with the people we're supporting? And that's exactly what the Code of Ethics helps us with. So let me just give you this. I love this photograph. For those of you that can see it, I'll describe it for those of you that can't see or aren't looking at it. This is a photograph of two gentlemen, one of which is a friend of mine. The gentleman on the right side of your screen, his name is Nick Smith. And again, Nick and Mark, they give me permission to use this photograph. So Nick Smith on the right, he's a direct support professional from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's been a direct support professional for over 20 years. That's a gentleman that he supports. His name's Mark. And there they are. There they are at the kitchen table. And you can tell that they have a good relationship. You can just see it between them. They're smiling. Either they're planning for the day ahead or they're talking about the day they just had. Wonderful. Love that photograph. You could tell it's in the context of a group home because you can see in the background there's a fire extinguisher. And for those of you that are supervisors and managers and perhaps administrators in organizations that have residential supports, chances are you're looking at the label on that fire extinguisher and ensuring that it's not expired. All kidding aside, Nick works in a group home. That's the context in which Nick works with Mark. They're having a great day, we hope. They're about to have a great day, we hope. Love the picture, but I'm putting the picture up there now. I'm going to ask a question. Again, a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. I'm going to kind of give you the answer. What do direct support professionals bring to work with them? What do we bring to work with us? And here, I'm going to cut to the chase. We bring us. We bring who we are. We bring our passion. We bring our commitment. we bring our skills, we bring our love, we bring our joy, we bring our hobbies. Here's the other side of this. If we're not careful, we can bring our negativity. We can bring our attitudes. We can bring our opinions. We can bring our baggage. That's the trick here. What do we bring of us to the relationship in this direct support relationship, which is unique? It's one of the most unique professional relationships in any occupation in the United States. It's certainly one of the most intimate. It's more intimate in some ways than a therapeutic relationship. It's, I think, more, it's deeper rooted in terms of its intensity than even a physician's relationship with their patient. Because as a direct support professional, working with that person that you're supporting, you're completely in their life space to support them in their path. And that said, it's a very complicated place to be. Are you a friend? Are you a relative? Are you a professional? Are you an ally? Are you a counselor? Are you a chef? Are you a chauffeur? Are you a coach? Here's the thing. You're all of that. Often you're all of that. And that's where it can be very tricky. And therefore, what are the obligations, the ethical obligations that we have in that relationship? There are certain things that we know they're given. No sexual romantic relationships, no financial exploitation, certainly no abuse, no neglect. That's clear. Most everything else is fuzzy, to be very honest with you. And that's why we go back to this code of ethics. Once again, when you watch the film, if you've watched the film, Christiane, you've watched the film, we go into each of these in detail, what they mean for this relationship, for both entities.
John, I need to jump in here.
Sure, please.
Tim had a comment that he wanted to make.
Sure, please.
And then we do need to get to DDS, if that's okay.
You got it, of course. I'll go on all night. So you just shut me up. Thank you.
Here comes Tim.
Hey, Tim.
John, all of my staff members watched your training and they thought it was excellent because they are my direct support providers and they feel it's a profession versus a hobby.
Hallelujah, Tim.
Since you have been in the field so long, and I was 11 in 1986, have you seen any changes in our society toward direct support professionals?
Yeah.
Because many DSP are first or second generation immigrants or family members, and oftentimes society thinks as caregiving is a low-grade job, where a person flipping burgers has more respect than someone who is taking care of a person. Could I email you? We should talk further. I have a feeling that you and I will become friends.
Good. Please.
I had a feeling you two were going to be friends.
I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm coming out to California. We're going to hang out. We'll go to In-N-Out Burger. Okay.
Let's do it. So we want to get, we talked about that I was able to watch John's video. So we want to get to DDS so they can share how all of your employees can watch John's video. So I have the great honor of introducing Vicki Smith from DDS. And she is going to explain now, I think I might get the acronym wrong. The DSP, I've heard it called Direct Service Professional. I've also heard it called Direct Support Professional. So I'll let Vicki clear that one up for us too. Thank you so much for being here, Vicki.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. And John, it's always great to see you. So I need to tap you on some stuff. We just developed a new job description for DSP interns, so I want to.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. So, if it's okay with you, I'm going to share my screen and walk through folks through. I think folks have the handout in English and Spanish. And if not, I can drop them in the chat as well. But yeah, thank you for having us. I'm Vicki Smith. If we haven't met before, I'm the Deputy Director for our Policy and Program Development Division here at the department. That's a big, long mouthful of words. But within our division is our Workforce Development and Training branch. This is a brand new branch to the department that is implementing 6 different workforce initiatives that are intended to help recruit, train, and retain the workforce across both direct service system, as well as one of our initiatives that's actually trying to build the workforce also for the regional centers who are struggling to keep up with hiring. Yeah, so I was asked to come to speak specifically about the DSP training stipend program. And Christina, you're right. You will hear us using the term interchangeably between direct support professional and direct service professional. Personally, I think direct service professional is a little bit broader of a term, but right now, again, the department is using them interchangeably. I usually start also by saying that in California, there is a long history with the use of the term of DSP, direct support professional, because more than 20 years ago in our statute in California, it required DSPs that were working in level 2, 3, and 4 residential settings to go through certification, 35 hours for their first class and another 35 hours for the second class annually to keep up their certification to work in those settings. That's still a requirement, still on the books, but the term DSP for all of our new workforce programs is much broader than that. It's not specific to a type of service, a type of setting. It's more tied to the function of someone's job or the function of how they support individuals that are served through the regional center. So for some of us that have been in the system a while, we have to kind of shift our mind as to how we even understand that term of direct support or direct service professional. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen and walk through, and it's so great to hear that so many of you are having your, the folks that support you through self-determination also take advantage of the training stipend program. I think it's an awesome program. It's a time-limited program, so we definitely want to get the word out so that everyone takes advantage. But sometimes there's nuances, right, on how to get folks paid when you're participating in self-determination. And we've put together kind of a little cheat sheet. There's a lot of text on it, but I think it will help you in some circumstances where you may have a little bit of a nuance where your support staff is working through a non-vendored provider. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk us through what that process looks like. So hopefully you're all seeing a screen here that says DSP training stipend program. Right on. So you're not seeing all my emails and how many I haven't read yet? Okay, right on. And I won't get embarrassed, at least not for that. So our DSP training stipend program was launched on September 12th of just this year. It is a time-limited program, and what that means is that folks need to complete their courses by June 30th of 2024. It seems so far away, and now it's actually really close. So we want to get the word out. Also, the last slide in the deck here has a QR code. That QR code would take you right to the Workforce Initiatives page of the department's website. And there is the link to the ArcaLearn platform. That's the learning management platform that the training program is seated on right now. And so after this presentation, if you haven't had folks take advantage of that, feel free to follow that QR code and point your staff in that direction. So let's talk a little bit about the eligibility first, because I know that's obviously a question as to whether folks can participate in the program or not. There's a side-by-side here, and on the left side, it's a list of kind of what makes somebody eligible as a DSP. And then on the right side, what makes somebody ineligible to participate in this particular program. So the first thing on the eligibility, is that someone needs to work on average 10 hours or more as a paid DSP per week. Sometimes we get questions like, well, how far back should I go to calculate that average, or how far forward, how much time should I take? We weren't really ever intending for folks to have to get that granular in how you looked at that. I think you know in your gut if your staff is working on average as a paid DSP more than 10 hours on average a week, right? Because it's going to fluctuate. People take vacation time off. Sometimes you need more help in one week than you might need in another. So it's just on average of 10 hours or more per week. So it has to be a paid DSP also, you'll notice, so it can't be a volunteer. They have to perform direct support tasks such as skill development, guidance, or personal assistance. Those aren't everything, but those are kind of just in a nutshell. I saw there was a question if there's a definition of a DSP, and I think John kind of hit on this a little bit too. It's really hard to give a true definition to a DSP, right? Because a DSP could mean many things, and because what they do is so tailored to an individual, the skills that someone would have or the tasks that someone would perform might be very, very different from one another. So there's not too many places where there's a real definitive definition of what a DSP is. But in general, for this particular program, it's again supporting folks with skill development, guidance, personal assistance. They have to be served through the regional center. That's obvious because that's where the funding's going through. But it has to be part of kind of their regular part of their job, and they have to be performing that about more than 50% of the time. So typically, folks that are like in admin positions or clerical positions wouldn't typically be people that we would call DSPs. However, if they're being paid more than 10 hours on average a week, and they're doing more than 50% of their time supporting individuals, then they may actually be eligible to participate in this program, okay? It doesn't matter whether they're employed by a traditional vendor of the regional center, or whether they're employed by you or by the FMS for folks in self-determination. That is not one of the criteria to make somebody eligible, okay? We want to make sure that all of our workforce initiatives are also including folks that are served through self-determination. So what makes somebody not eligible, and you'll kind of start to see the logic on this, and it's really that the non-eligible is someone who's supporting someone through the regional center, but the funding's actually not coming through the regional center for that support. So staff that are paid through Medi-Cal, which you know, one of our primary examples, I think on that is probably going to be in-home support services. That's a Medi-Cal funded kind of under program. The exception with that is folks that are supporting individuals in intermediate care facilities. And of course, that doesn't really apply to most of the folks on the phone here, because you can't be a resident in a ICF and be in self-determination unless you're transitioning in or out. But those are facilities that specifically serve only folks with developmental disabilities. And so we didn't want to exclude them out of the eligibility criteria. Also, folks that wouldn't be eligible are folks that are funded through health insurance, or through school districts, or maybe those that provide just kind of intermittent services, or temporary services, home modifications, meal delivery, that kind of thing. Folks that are hired through a staffing service, or folks that are 1099. And I think that might be kind of in self-determination. We might see people that are 1099 a little bit more than we would see in, say, traditional services. So folks that are 1099, they're not employees, right? They're contractors, and so they wouldn't be eligible. Or if you have on-call or PRN workers. So again, it comes where the funding is. And one of the questions we get often is, well, I support somebody who's out living on, you know, they're living in their own place, and I support them through kind of the concept of supported living services or independent living services. But I also do their IHSS, you know, would I qualify? And my thing is, I just give the easiest example mathematically for me. Let's say, for instance, I'm your support staff, and I work for you 40 hours a week, and you know, 30 of those hours are funded through in-home support service, but 10 of those hours are actually funded through your budget, right, and your spending plan, which means through the regional center. And if that's their permanent schedule, then they would most likely qualify, right, because they've got the paid on average more than 10 hours a week. So it doesn't matter if they have other funding that's mixing with it. We just want to make sure on that eligibility criteria that that's tied to the portion that is regional center funded. So the first thing to look at is kind of, is your support staff, eligible or not eligible? The second question we would want to ask, and it's really the most important question, and that is, where does your DSP receive their paycheck? Who signs their paycheck, right? Who does it come from? The box to the left is if they're working through a traditional vendor, like say ABC Day Program, I'll just use that as an example. When the DSP registers through the ARCA-Learn platform, and again, that's where the program is that has the courses that are the approved courses for the program, they'll need 2 bits of information when they register from their employer. 1, they'll need a vendor number, and then they'll need 2, the regional center that vendor number is affiliated with. Super, super important. They need to talk to their employer to get that information so that their employer knows that they're going to be participating in the program. That way the employer can let them know, can you do it on the clock, or am I going to get paid to do it, or do I have to do it on my own, etc. But it's really important that those numbers be accurate, the vendor number and the regional center, because it ties into the payment mechanism. It ties into the way that the reports are generated to the regional centers to set up the authorizations for payment. Okay, so your staff should be coming to you and finding out like who issues my paycheck, right? If it's ABC Day Program, then when the DSP, and I'm going back to the box here at the very far left, if they work for ABC Day Program, when they register on the platform for ARCA-Learns as a user, they will be putting in that vendor's vendor number. They will be putting in that vendor's affiliated regional center, right? So the vendoring regional center to that vendor number. When the report generates to the regional center, and regional centers will vary just a little bit on how they're setting these up, but most part, the report comes to them and it shows the vendor number, it shows the direct support professional, it shows that DSP's email, it shows the date and the time that they took the course and the name of the course. The regional center then takes that information and DSPs can receive up to 2 stipends. Regardless of the number of the employers, they can only receive 2 stipends, okay? So the first class that's required is the NADSP Code of Ethics. Then they have a choice on the second class. They can take more classes than that, but they can only receive 2 stipends. So when the regional center generates that report and they set up the payment, they're setting it up for those first 2 courses, or a DSP may choose to only take 1 course, either way. However they set up the invoice, it goes out to the employer, right? So again, I, as ABC Day Program, would be receiving an invoice, and it would show, my DSP's name. It would show the date and time that they took the course and the course title. And that's so that I can verify, was that person employed by me at the time they took the course, right? Because sometimes DSPs, by the time they take the course and they're getting their payment, they may work for a different employer. It's very likely in our field, right? So the day program signs off, yes, that's my staff, yep, and they took that course. They send it back to the regional center inputs that and then issues out the payment to the provider. The employer then, right, issues out the $625 to the DSP through wages. That's before taxes. So depending on what level of tax bracket you're at, it'll probably round out somewhere to around a $500 net pay. So the $625 is pre-tax. The $150 of each of those 775 authorizations basically is kept by the employer. It's for really kind of 2 different things. One is to play the employer burden of taxes. And 2 is they may have had the employee take it while they were on the clock. And so they may have to pay the wage for the time period they took it. They may also have had to bring in another staff to support an individual while that staff was taking the course. So the $150 admin fee that they get for each class the DSPs are taking, up to those 2, is to be able to cover those kinds of costs. So that's the admin fee that goes with it. So that's the left box is if you've got a support staff working for a vendor in the traditional system, regional center that's also supporting you in self-determination. The second box that you see in the middle is for those support staff that you have that your financial management service, your FMS is the employer for. And again, this is going back to the DSP looking and saying, who issues my paycheck? It's the easiest way to figure this out. If the FMS is the one that issues my paycheck, the process actually is very much the same as with a traditional vendor. The DSP goes onto the platform. They're using the vendor number of the FMS. So they need to ask the FMS, what vendor number am I using and what regional center is it affiliated with? Because remember, those two pieces, they're going to need, your support staff's going to need that to register to participate in the program. They go through that exact same process. The report spits out to the regional center generates the authorization, it goes back out, or the invoice, I should say, goes out to the FMS. The FMS is signing off. Yep, I know those people. Those are staff. And they send it back. The regional center then issues the payment, and then the payment's issued through wages. It's not part of your budget. This is a program that's completely not tied to individuals. They're separate authorizations altogether. So they don't affect your spending plan, your budget, or any of those kind of things. They're paid completely outside of everything. The nuanced situation that only occurs in self-determination because, well, that's just how self-determination rolls in California, as we say, is when you have a support staff that may actually be employed through a non-vendored provider. And this is this is just the little nugget of nuance, right, that we have in self-determination. But there's a work for that, right? We just need to lay it out and make it work. So in this case, if they meet the eligibility, again, they're working on average more than 10 hours or more per week as a paid DSP. They're providing support, direct support. So they're doing that more than 50% of the time. They're an employee, right? They're not 1099 or those other non-eligible criteria. The non-vendored provider needs to provide the names of your support staff to your FMS. This is a super, super important very first step because your FMS has no relationship to that support staff. Their relationship is to your non-vendored provider, right? So if you have a non-vendored provider that's the employer of those support staff, your FMS will never know the names. Super important because remember how I was talking about those reports generate and then the regional center sets up the claim? Well, they can set up the claim to the FMS, but when the FMS gets it, they're going to look and say, I have no idea who that person is. This isn't my person, and not validate that your staff went through. So super important. And it's the additional step that's different than the other two boxes. If your support staff works through a non-vendored provider and is eligible for the program and has taken the training, the non-vendored provider needs to inform the FMS that they're going to be taking the training. They need to get the FMS's vendor number that the FMS will want them to use and the affiliated regional center. Because when that support staff registers, they're still going to need to provide the FMS number and the vendor that's associated with it. Because again, that's how the regional center is going to generate the claim. They go in, they take the class, the report generates, they issue an invoice, the FMS gets the invoice, and now they can look and say, hey, Vicki said that she has Joe Bob over here that is supporting her through a non-vendored provider. I didn't recognize the name as one of my employees, but yet I knew that she had it because she gave me the name. They can sign off on that. When the FMS is paid, the $775 for each course, that full amount will be transferred to the non-vendored provider. Okay, I want to repeat that. In this case, when the FMS receives the $775 for me taking the code of ethics, they receive a $775 for me taking informed decision making. That full $775 will be passed directly to my employer, okay, the non-vendored provider in this case, because that non-vendored provider is still the employer of record. They still need to make the payment as wages. The $625 is wages. They need to then keep the $150 to pay the employer burden, right? The taxes that they have to pay on paying out that wage. The FMS fee doesn't increase. FMSs have considered this as part of their regular FMS rate. It's just like issuing any other check, because really they're issuing this kind of through that the portion of their bill payer model, right? They're issuing a check out like they would for any other thing that non-vendor provider would be charging them. So that's
Vicki?
yes, ma'am.
Can I jump in real quick? I think that there might be a little confusion
Mhm.
because the financial management services call anybody that they sign up with them,
Mhm.
they call it vendoring. So
Mhm.
can you clarify to everybody what you mean when you say non-vendored provider?
Ah, it's when I say non-vendor provider, it just means they're not vendor with the regional center. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. I apologize. So anyone that's not vendored with the regional center that is actually the employer of your support staff, they normally would be submitting a bill every month, right, for your support staff to the FMS to be paying out. So it's really that process is no different. The difference here is just making sure that entity makes sure the FMS knows the names of your support staff so that they recognize it when the invoice comes, because otherwise the FMS doesn't know the names of your, they won't be looking for it because it's just not an automatic thing for them. So again, the FMS pays out the 100% of that 775 for each of those courses, because the employer that's issuing that check will need to pay the employer taxes out of that. Now we developed a standard kind of form that is just an agreement between the FMS and your quote non-vendor provider, your provider that's not vendored with the regional center, but's employing your direct support staff. And it's really optional. And I turn to it here on the screen. It's really between your FMS and your not. I'm just going to keep using the term non-vendored provider because I don't know what else to call the entity that is employing your support staff. This is a form that actually the FMS has already put in place with the regional center for employees of their own. And it says the same thing. It's an agreement understanding that if I, as a vendor, am receiving 775 per course, I'm agreeing that I'm paying 625 of that as direct wages to the DSP. So this is a form that the FMS can use with your non-vendored entity, making sure that they still have that agreement so that your non-vendor entity is also passing on and agreeing to make sure that they pass on that $625 training stipend to your DSP. So we provided this to the FMSs as well. Feel free to keep this. That way you can show your support staff, if they haven't already taken advantage of the program, you can share with them that little cheat sheet too, so that they're more familiar with what they need to do with the FMS to make sure that your support staff are getting the stipend and participating in the program as well. The statute requires that DSPs receive payment within 90 days of completion of the course. I will say, and this isn't in defense of anything, this is just a fact. When the guidance came out, it started with everybody at the same time. I think looking back, I probably would have done it a little bit differently and given regional centers like a 30-day lead-in time to get their system set up to be able to do this, because it kind of put things in a bit more of a bind. To be able to kind of process these payments out. This is a very, very unique situation. The department's never done something like this before, where the department is pushing money to the regional center, to a provider, to a DSP. So there's never been a kind of a relationship between an initiative the department has done in infusing a direct support professional or the workforce directly. It's usually at a different level. And so we've been learning a lot through operationalizing this program. So there in the very beginning, there may have been some delays in payment. There was uncertainty about how to do this when we have these nuanced situations with self-determination. And so I think all the regional centers are in a really good place now. And the program is really successful. We actually have over 37,600 folks that have actually registered on the platform and taken the courses. We get nothing but positive feedback about the course. The courses are about an hour long. If you're not familiar with the program, they're about an hour long. And they have it's not really a test at the end. It's more of a kind of a survey and getting some feedback. It allows for, I think, the DSP to do some reflection of how they would take that knowledge and really apply it to a situation for someone they're supporting. And it also is really helpful because it's providing the department back a lot of information about what DSPs would like to see in the future. And while that's great to hear, we also want to make a concerted effort to hear from individuals served what they would like to see more in their DSPs and the skill set that they would like to see. So it's been very helpful for us to do that. Right now, when you go on, the first class that you will take is the NADSP Code of Ethics. The second course, there's 2 other courses currently on the platform. One is on informed decision making. That actually was also produced by John and team with NADSP. And then the third course that's on there is person-centered planning, which I know John it's already gave us those fillings towards that word today. Person-centered planning and the HCBS, a home and community-based services final rule, everything that a DSP wants to know. That actually is a video that was done by NADSP, and they generously allowed us to use it, and we put Spanish captioning and ASL on it. All of the videos have Spanish captioning and ASL. So that we can get that done. It was filmed during the pandemic, so there's some references to social distancing and whatnot. And as a result, we're actually having it refilmed as the same static kind of presentation by the same presenters, just so that it can be brought up to speed a little bit. We're also looking to produce 2 additional trainings to put on the platform for DSPs. One is on cultural awareness and cultural sensitivity. And then the final one is on DSPs that may be supporting individuals that identify as LGBTQIA+. And so we'll continue, I think, to develop trainings and topics as you all bring them to us. The screen that you have up right now, that QR code, if you were to scan it and hit there, it'll take you directly to that link you see up above, and that's the Workforce Initiatives page of the department's website. About halfway down on there, you'll see a tab for each one of our 6 initiatives. Everything from our bilingual, multilingual pay differential, which we're hoping to launch here within the next month, to the Regional Center tuition, staff tuition reimbursement program, to the DSP training stipend, information on the soon to come DSP internship program, and then our larger program, which is the last of them that will be deployed, is our what we call our DSP University. And it's a tiered training program that is tied to pay differentials. Please use that page as you wish. And again, if there are things, I'll take this down. If there are things that you all feel would be really helpful to see in your DSPs and skills, please let us know. We're always looking for new ways to help build their resources, build their tools, make them feel more confident in providing the support that you all feel that you would like to see. So I probably talked way too much. I apologize.
No, Vicki, thank you. That was so helpful. I actually brought up the page because I did want people to see it so they know where to go. We put the link in the chat so you can go to this page. You want to scroll down a bit, and the one you want to see, there's these different tabs here. You want to make sure you select the DSP training stipend. That's the one we were talking about today. And then when you go down, if we go to ARC Learn Center, I've done this before, but I will click so you guys can see where it's going to take you to. Oh, well, it's thinking. There it goes. The login, I've already logged in before, so it went straight in. But what you'll see then in the ARC Learn is you will get the courses over here. They'll show up here on the right, and you'll see. We did need to use our FMS code, so vendor number. And remember, don't ask a friend for it. You got to ask yours because FMSs have different vendor numbers with different regional centers. Yeah. So they have to link up. So ask your FMS for their code. And that's how you'll get to this point. So I just wanted to show everybody kind of what it looks like so you know where to go. The other one I wanted you to see, which was important, if you are stuck, you're not sure who to talk to at your regional center, go back to that main page. There's the payment question for the DSP training stipend. This lists who you talk to at every regional center. So if you are not sure who to contact at your regional center, this is where you would go, and you can contact that person and they will be able to help you with your regional center. Yep.
There's also, thank you for pointing all of this out, Christiana. There's also on there recordings. They're not the training, so I want to make sure people know they're just informational, and they actually will walk you through how to register. One is also for providers. It talks a little bit more about the payment system. We also did a webinar yesterday that was an update on all 6 of our workforce initiatives. And as soon as they get that recording all packaged up with the handouts, that will also be posted there. So that's a great page to just kind of keep in touch with, hey, what are the other ones that are rolling out? Want to make sure that my support staff get to take advantage of those, etc. Always feel free to check that page for updates. So
I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. So at this point, we want people to know that you can raise your hand. And then we have some great questions in the chat. And what we'll do is we'll alternate between the raised hands and I will ask the questions in the chat. But I actually have a question for you first. So there's a lot of confusion when we're talking about either co-employer or sole employer, that there is that $150 cost that would go to the employer. So if you're in sole employer, we have to pay that employer burden. Is it going to go into our spending plan somehow? How is that employer burden going to happen so it doesn't come out of our cost of our employer burden?
yeah, none of the, that's a great question. None of the costs or the dollars associated with these programs, any of the workforce initiatives, are tied to an individual, if that makes sense. Okay. They're tied to the program itself and to the DSP. And as a result, they're not linked to a consumer authorization, and they're not linked to your budget or your spending plan.
So then when you say that money is taxed, when they get their tax of the money, it'll just include that amount, but it won't be.
Right. So if I was the employer and you were my employee, I would be getting the $775 for, you took 2 classes. Let's say you took 2 classes. So I'm getting $775 for your first class. I'm getting $775 for your second class. I'm paying you $625 out of the first class. I'm paying you $625 out of the second class. Your taxes come out of there, right? Based on whatever you've established as your the number of it's not dependent. So the number of exemptions. Exemptions, yes, the exemptions. However, me as the employer, I also have my employer burden, right? I have to pay taxes on that money to pay you for it. There may have been a situation where you said, hey, Vicki, the person I work for needs still staff to support them during the time that I take it during the work hour. And Jenny's going to cover that time. I may have had to pay Jenny also for that additional time. And so that $150 that I'm retaining may also be used to backfill that time. It may have been paid because part of it is I was also paying you to take it on the clock. So that $150 stays with the employer to meet those obligations, so that it wasn't creating a hardship or an employer thinking, well, I don't want to participate in this because it's actually costing me money to be able to do it.
Well, and what about in sole employer when we are the employer?
The same.
Okay.
Whoever is issuing the paycheck is the one who's keeping the $150 admin fee on each of the classes. And again, it's to cover those kinds of costs. Some people will have more of those costs and some people will have less of those costs, but there was we didn't want to get really in the weeds of trying to figure out, well, calculate it this way or make it complicated. I know that may surprise y'all. We tried not to make this complicated.
Okay, so we had a question that was, you mentioned that a staff has to work a minimum of 10 hours a week. For how long? What if a staff member has worked for a year and worked 10 plus hours a week, and after they took the trainings and earned their certificate of completions, they decided to move on to another career and no longer on my payroll? Are they still eligible to get their stipend through the FMS?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, we don't want people to have to overthink the estimate. I would always say that you should make sure they're eligible at the time that they take the training. So if for some reason, say they're working for me this week, and I know they're not going to be working next week, and there's no way that even this month, that means they're going to average 10 hours a week, then they probably don't meet the eligibility. And every case is going to be a little bit different. The other thing is we get the question quite a bit as well. They worked for me when they took the course, but they don't work for me anymore. And how do I pay that out, or who pays it out now that they're working for somebody else? Well, they actually earned it while they were working for you at the time, right? Because it has to be paid out through wages. So just always keep in mind, and the FMSs know this too, is that you would just send it to wherever their last wages went, right? You would still pay it through the regular process. I can't advise you on this. I just know that there will be some folks that say, well, but now I'm paying it in a different tax year than the year that they actually took it. And so I would encourage you just to consult with your payroll entity or whoever's doing your payroll. You may just have to issue a corrected W-2 as a result. You may not need to because it may still show up in the calculation for the W-2 for the previous calendar year. But there's going to be situations where vendors and or employers going to get into, that could be a potential as well. Yeah.
This is the question I've been getting a lot, which is my FMS is not sure how to pay the direct service providers. And I was told there was a form from regional centers, which we saw. The FMS does know how to go about it, or this form from the regional center. How can we help our FMS and guide them to know what the form the FMS needs to complete?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We just, and I don't know if that was a little ways back or if that was just like yesterday kind of thing. We just did a briefing for the FMSs, walking through these very fine details. I think it was 2 weeks ago, although time seems to pass faster. It might have been last week. If at any time your FMS is confused about how to do that, they can reach out to either the SDP team at DDS. It's just SDP at dds.ca.gov. Or they can reach out to the workforce team, and that's just simply workforce@dds.ca.gov. So workforce or SDP, either one at DDS, both teams know exactly how to process and to be able to pick up the phone and call the FMS and walk them through the process. I think nearly all of the FMSs, I'm trying to think if there was any missing. I'd have to check with Susie. I think most of the FMSs were actually at that briefing. Regional centers were also at that briefing, but there's always going to be someone that is probably like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So yeah, you can always point them in our direction. It's totally fine. Yeah.
And we did reach out and speak to most of the FMSs, and the ones that I spoke to said they were aware of it, and to take your certificate and to send it to your person who is helping you to get them in. So do reach out to your FMS again. 16 different FMSs, 16 different ways of doing it.
Right.
But it's all of the ones that we talked to either said they were aware of it, were working on it, or they, are just hearing about it and working on it. So don't be surprised if they're catching up, but they are aware of it. So Lourdes, you had your hand up.
It's literally the same thing. The thing is, I would like to see like a formal step by step, because families don't even know. In general, if you ask them, do you know the code of your FMS? There's 2 codes. There's actually, some of them have 3, one for their co-employer, sole employer, and then so with those things, families don't really know, and not every single SDP participant has the funding to be asking questions from an independent facilitator. So some of that information we really do need to have in out for the public, in a cheat sheet for the community, saying like, these are the FMSs, this is the vendor. So families do know if they have a co-employer, sole employer. Those are the things that makes it difficult, because you have to get, what about the families that do not have a current facilitator? What about the families that, just switch FMSs? A large portion of people switched last year to a different FMS. There are questions like that having a cheat sheet saying, this is all the possible options, this is how you do it, and this is the protocol, like simple guideline that it's a 1 or 2 page, and for the community to be able to do it, because otherwise they're overwhelmed. And that happens if you could do it in multiple languages, even better, because that's how this information will be able to go out and about.
Great
Yeah,
recommendation, Lourdes.
I appreciate the input. Just so that you know, there are recordings of the webinars that do walk people through step by step, and they're posted on the website. But I will look and see if we recorded the walkthrough with the FMSs about specifically how to do it for self-determination. And if we didn't, we can always do a self-recorded presentation of it and also post it to just kind of get into that nuance with self-determination as well. So appreciate the input on that.
And the list of the FMS vendors would be really helpful. I think that would be great if that's something that could be done. I don't know how easy that is.
You mean
We
the-
only have
Do you mean the list of the vendor numbers that are associated with the FMSs? Is that what you're?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let me see if I
That
can.
that's stuff that's hard to get for participants. So if you had like a universal list, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Let me tap Suzanne and find out about that.
That would be great. So we only have a couple minutes. I'm going to ask one quick question here, and it was, if you are not a DSP, but you want to watch the Code of Ethics video and gather insight in general, is that possible?
It is absolutely, and thank you for actually asking that. All these things I forgot to tell you. The other thing is support staff can watch. There's so many more videos actually on that platform that are outside of the DSP program, the training stipend program. People feel free to watch any of them. When you register now, it will actually ask you, are you DSP eligible for the training stipend? Or are you someone that is just watching it out of your own education? You can participate and you can watch the trainings without even being eligible for the training stipend program. You would just check that so that when the reports spit out, it doesn't identify you. And then the regional center wouldn't have to filter it and all that kind of stuff. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I will say, because some people have brought it up, it's the ARCA Learn platform, the Association of Regional Center Agencies. ARCA is not affiliated with the program. Regional Center is not affiliated in the sense of putting the trainings on and stuff. The department didn't have its own learning management system. We're in the process of actually developing one. Sac State's developing it for us. So we were just really grateful that ARCA allowed us to put this program on that platform to be able to kind of accelerate out the training stipends to our DSPs. So in case folks are wondering why it says ARCA on it. But again, other classes on there too that they have available. You're welcome to take any of those. Yeah.
Well, we're out of time and we cannot keep our interpreters over time. So I hope that this really helped everyone. We were getting so many questions about the stipend program. I think it's a great opportunity. It's, to me, a lot of money. I think that it's so, and I really, like I said, everybody that I have seen take it has really benefited from it. John, thank you so much for being here and for, because DVU is very person-centered. There, I said it, and focused on self-determination, but the true person-centered, like you said, not lip service. We really believe in the philosophy of it, and I love that that's where you're at. And Vicki Smith, thank you so much for being here and for explaining it to us. We really, really appreciate it.
Welcome. Thanks for the invite again.
Thank you for the invite.
So we will see everybody back here January 24th, and we're going to be talking about the DDS directives that just came out. We did also put in the chat the DDS meetings that are going to be happening on these directives. So do see if you can get to those in between, and we'll have a long discussion about it. Have a great week, everyone, and thank you so much for being here.